All right, everybody, here we are after some technical difficulties. We have made it. Software is putting us to the test today. But guys, super excited to be here. Got my friend Chris Logan on. We are going to talk about virtual wholesaling. But Chris and I met a couple of weeks ago. We've been following each other on Facebook and Instagram and all the things for probably years, man. I was shocked to actually see you there and get to meet you in person. You spoke on stage, talked about Facebook and some really cool stuff. Hopefully we can get into that a little bit. But yeah, guys, one of the reasons I wanted to bring Chris on is we align very closely. In our business, we always talk about simple is scalable, and he has really taken that to another level with virtual wholesaling and building out not only his own business but teaching students and clients. So, Chris, welcome, man. So happy to have you here.
David, awesome, man. So glad to be here. I got to tell you, that intro music pumps me up.
Yeah, the team, they do a good job on that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was great meeting you last week. I know we've been connected for a long time,
Mhm.
and it's really good to finally meet people in person. Like, I'm all
Yeah.
about the virtual and I love it.
Mhm.
But when we can get the opportunity to get together and mastermind,
Yeah.
that's where the magic happens. So
Yeah.
glad to be here.
Cool. So you're doing all kinds of cool things, amazing stuff right now. But it wasn't probably always like that. Like, how did you get started in real estate? I think I know a little bit of the backstory, but
Sure.
yeah, I'm sure people would love to hear it.
Yeah, great question. So I started out like a lot of people with just like a desire to get into real estate, but not really sure where to turn. There's so many different ways like you can get started in real estate, so many paths you can go down, so many ways you can make money. It can be really overwhelming for the average person when they're first just getting started. So
Yeah.
I remember I was at my church and I was talking to a friend of mine who I knew he was really successful, but I had no idea if he was in real estate or anything. And he turns out he owned a couple of rental properties and he's like, hey, listen, you should read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was
Mm,
like, cool, I've never heard of the book, right?
yeah.
So I went out, immediately bought it that day and started reading it that night. And I finished the entire book that night. I stayed up till like 3 a.m. finishing
Yeah.
the book because the concepts in there were totally blowing my mind and were opposite of what I was taught
Mhm.
growing up and opposite of what we're taught to do in school. Like you go to school, you get a good job, you go to college, you do all these things, right? And you retire at 65 when you hope you have enough money to live off of. And there you go, invest in a Roth IRA and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that just wasn't the path for me. And I was like, I really feel like I'm meant for more and I want to do more, right? And so that's when, after I read that book, I was at my wife's house, which she was my girlfriend at the time. I was checking my email and I
Mhm.
saw a banner ad
Yeah.
from Robert Kiyosaki, how he was coming to Tampa. I was like,
Wow.
this is my shot. I'm going to go there. I'm going to shake his hand, tell him like how much he's changed my life. And I love this
Yeah.
book. So I asked her to go with me because I didn't want to go alone. So I
Mhm.
went to this event. Shocker, he wasn't there,
He was
right?
not there.
But the cool thing was I took a lot from that event. And on the third day of the event, the
Mhm.
speakers they stood at the front of the room, and I remember it was like it was yesterday, right? They stood at the front of the room. They're drawing all these different strategies on the board of how you can make money in real estate. They
Yeah.
talked about flipping, development, creative finance, sandwich lease options, and all these other things. And then one strategy like really hit home with me, and it was wholesaling. When they talked about how you could take a piece of paper and flip
Yeah.
it for tens of thousands of dollars, you didn't need loans from banks, you didn't use your own personal credit. I
Like
was
magic.
like all in. My
Yeah.
wife and I looked at each other and I was like, this makes sense, right? So we immediately signed up for a mentorship. It was a 2 day back-to-back training in Miami, Florida, right?
Oh, okay.
And I remember going to Miami and learning all this, feeling pumped at the end of the event. And I was like, we're going to just do 100 deals a month, right? It's going to be bananas. And I'd love to tell you that's what happened,
Yeah.
but it
Not what
didn't. It actually took us 6 months to do our first deal. And we didn't quit though. We were just like, whatever it takes. Along that path, we hired a mentor, which started to dramatically speed things up,
happened.
which is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about that. And from there, that got us to doing deals consistently. And then about 2 years before COVID, we were thinking there's got to be a better way. Like my
Yeah.
wife and I were exhausted. She was going on like 15 appointments a week
Wow.
and she was coming home being like just drained. And I was like, what if we did this whole thing over the phone? Because we had gotten some contracts over the phone, right? Sellers to say yes and got them to sign through DocuSign, right? And I was like, what if we could do that on every deal?
Mhm.
And so that's really when we started getting into the virtual side. And fast forward, COVID was actually one of our best years that we've
Yeah,
had
us too.
when so many people were just in chaos and not knowing what to do or where to turn, right? And then fast forward from there, we ended up growing our wholesaling business virtually to 7 figures. And here we are today.
So a couple amazing things in there that I really want to point out was one, you wanted to surround yourself with people who were doing the thing that you wanted, which was great. You
Totally.
went to your friend, and then you were coachable. He told you to go do something, and you actually went out and did it that day. So you can follow instruction, and then you read the book, you went to the event, you got mentoring, you got coaching, you took all of the steps. So it's not a surprise that you found success. Like it is a formula that is fairly repeatable. One thing I like to tell people is real estate is not hard.
Yeah.
Like, especially wholesaling, you can explain it to a third grader in about 10 minutes. It's not difficult at all. But it's just that getting up every day and going and doing the thing and not quitting. That's the real secret to success. So what kind of work were you doing before you read Rich Dad Poor Dad? What was your background?
So I had actually been in the wireless industry selling
Oh,
phones for Verizon.
okay.
Before that, a partner of mine, so a friend of mine, we
Mhm.
actually owned a T-Mobile franchise with like 6 locations.
Mhm.
And once that came crumbling down after a year and a
Yeah.
half working together, we just had two similar personalities and we were just butting heads a lot. I walked away from that business and I was really bouncing back from my own setback, right? So
Yeah.
I didn't have tons of money or anything like that at that time. And I was rebuilding and I saw real estate as the option and the opportunity to be able to do that.
Awesome. When I was hiring salespeople, I always loved to hire like those kids that worked at the kiosk at the phone booths in the mall. They're
That was
just like
me.
oozing confidence. They'll talk to anybody. They don't ever get discouraged when people tell them no.
Yeah.
They're just the best. So, and what about your wife? What was her background?
So my wife, I ended up meeting her because I left the wireless industry after a little while
Yeah.
and went into being a marketing consultant where I would,
Mm,
put together marketing packages for small to medium sized businesses, cold calling, door knocking, all that stuff.
yeah.
And then I met her at a networking event. We
Mhm.
were both trying to better ourselves, and
Really?
she was doing IT staffing sales.
Yeah.
I showed up late for the event and there was one seat left, like right next to her. So I guess it was fate, right? I
It was
sit
big.
down, we connected and kind of went on from there.
Wow, amazing. And then you both coming out of some type of sales,
Hmm.
just created the ultimate power couple. And she was all in on real estate, huh? She was good with taking the jump and taking the leap to do it.
Yeah, I was really fortunate in that because I know that there's a lot of couples where
Yeah.
not all the time are both people on board, right? Sometimes you have one person that's a hardcore worker bee, 9 to 5, wants to retire at 65. They want the security and they value that in a job. And the other person's more of an entrepreneur, and there's constantly that rub, and it can make it really tough, right? But when you have both people supporting on the journey, like that's where I feel like I was truly blessed. She was looking for something more like I was. And we just met at the perfect intersection in our lives where we both wanted more and we're on the pathway and open to get it.
Love it. So real quick, tell me about the first deal. Everybody remembers their first deal.
Oh, yeah. So I did pretty much everything wrong that you could possibly do, right? One of my mentors talks about massive imperfect
Mhm.
action, and
Feels
that's
good.
exactly what I did. I was totally focused on progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
And I remember one day I was in Verizon and I had this customer come in and we were talking about, I was getting her set up with a plan. And she was telling me how her mom had passed away and they left her this property. And and I knew the area that the property was in. It's probably in one of the wealthiest parts of Tampa Bay, right?
Oh, wow.
And so immediately when she's talking about this property, I was like, that's interesting. We had just finished the wholesaling class.
Yeah.
And I said, I actually work with a group of investors who may be very interested in that property. What can you tell me about it? So she told me everything about it, right? I went home, immediately did research on it and everything. And then the funny thing was the mentorship that I was in at the time, they didn't give me a purchase agreement, right? They're just like, oh, you have to just go find a purchase agreement. And I'm like,
Oh my Lord.
shoot. And this was back in 2010 or 2012
Yeah.
when there wasn't the wealth of information on the
No,
internet with real estate as there
no.
is now,
It's
right?
so different. So different back
So
then.
I just went to Google and typed in as is purchase agreement Florida. I downloaded a 15-page monster of an agreement.
Yes.
Fax machines were a big thing back
They
then.
were.
So I remember being on my break at work, filling this thing out, hoping I was filling it out the right way, waiting
Yeah,
for my
because it's
coach to call
15
me back.
pages, right? Oh,
It was bananas, man. I go to Claire's next door and I fax this over to the seller.
mhm.
She signs it, faxes it back to me. Boom, I'm in, right?
Wow.
So
And then the real
then,
fear begins, like, oh my God, what do I do now? Now I gotta,
oh yeah,
now
that
the
was
next step, I gotta figure it out.
listen, I had no buyers.
Yeah.
I had no idea really what to do next. I just knew that I had to sell the deal, right?
Yeah.
So I went to the property and I posted some ads on Craigslist about the deal and stuff like that, right? And I was conducting showings at the property. I thought that I needed to show up in a suit, in a tie, shiny shoes, all
Yeah.
that stuff, man. I looked like I came off straight from Wall Street because that's what I was expecting. I was expecting these buyers to be like big dogs, you know what I mean? Like showing up like that. Then you get in the business, you realize it's totally the opposite, right? And it was kind of funny. I was like locking the door behind people, kind of creepy, right?
Yeah.
But my favorite part of it was when they would ask me how much the deal was, right?
Mhm.
And so at the time, I was like, it's 330,000, but in order to get access to the deal at that price, you have to pay me 30,000,
Mhm.
right? And they're like, wait a second, that's 360,000. And I'm like, well, kind of, you're paying me 30 to get access to it at 330. So it totally
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Needless to say, they didn't buy the deal.
No, a little
And
clunky.
yeah. And so there was just so many things that went wrong during that
Yeah.
process. If you name it, I did it. But I learned a lot of valuable lessons of things not to do on the next one.
Sure. Did you end up selling it or no?
No, actually we didn't. So the seller had a for sale by owner sign on the yard, right? Like on their gate. So I was like, if there's going to be any calls coming into this property, it's going to go to me. So I clipped down her sign,
Oh,
right?
I've taken so many of them down.
I
Yeah.
put mine up
Mhm.
and I got so many calls, which is great. But then I get an angry call from the seller being like, you took my sign down. You have no right to do this and blah, 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 blah. And I didn't have a buyer at that point. And she said that she had someone that was really interested. And I was like, hey, no problem. I apologize.
Yeah.
If you want to sell this to somebody else, my guys aren't interested. I'll go ahead and cancel the contract right now. And so she's like, okay. But then my next deal came after that. So
Was 330, was that even the right number?
As far as like how much the property was selling for?
Yeah. Yeah. Should you have been lower?
Oh my gosh, man. So check this out. So the average house in this neighborhood, in this area, is probably over $1 million today, right?
Oh,
So knowing if I knew what I know now
I know.
back then, and this is the power of mentorship, right? I could have made 6 figures on the deal easily, multiple 6 figures on the deal. What the buyer ended up doing is he ended up buying this historic property. Okay. He ended up renovating that property. The property was sitting on a double lot. He ended up subdividing the lot, selling that lot to a builder who built a brand new house on it and then sold that too. The guy probably made $500,000 on there easily.
Mhm.
Easily.
Unbelievable. I do that too when I'm sitting around with guys that were around in 2009, 10, and we're just like, my God, we were wholesaling these houses for $5,000, $10,000. And now, they 5x'd in value, but back then we were broke. We were doing what we could to get by, and best decisions you can at the time.
Absolutely.
So cool. So Tampa Bay, I love it. I used to live over in Seminole. Used to run
Nice.
some stores out there, but so like, what was that transition, from wholesaling while you were at Verizon into going full time? How long did that take? What was that switch over like?
Yeah, so I eventually left the job at Verizon to make more money at this marketing company, and my wife and I really put our heads down and committed to a plan. Like I said, we hired a coach so that we weren't running in 50 different directions. They gave us a focused plan of what to do, and within 3 years, we felt comfortable and confident to go ahead and leave our corporate jobs, kind of like retire, right?
Yeah.
So that was roughly about 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And we haven't looked back since and haven't had a job since. Have mainly just been doing real estate as our thing and recently added coaching here in the last couple of years.
I love it. So one of the things we talked about at the very, very beginning was you were just in Tampa Bay. You were doing in-person visits, which is great. Do you know Kenny Rushing? You must have.
I do. Yeah.
Kenny's a good buddy of mine. I've been to, he was one of my early mentors way back in the day. But yeah, so what was that? What made you venture outside of Tampa and start to go, to do virtual wholesaling, as I say, which is working in other markets?
Yeah, great question. So Tampa started to get very, very competitive,
Mhm.
right? So from the standpoint of marketing costs were continuing to go up. So the cost per deal was much higher, and it was really difficult to scale there, right?
Yeah,
Because we had everybody and their brother that was
sure.
doing anything big here.
Mhm.
I remember we were doing direct mail. We were sending 30,000 pieces a month,
Mhm.
and we would go into these sellers' houses and they'd have a stack of direct mail like this big on their
Mhm.
desk. And
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, I'm going to go with somebody. I'm just going to peel off the top and just continue to go down the list. And so we were just like, I wonder, rather than continue to beat our head against the wall here in Tampa, I wonder if we'd have success with this model somewhere else,
Mhm.
right? So I'm trying to think of we went virtual first in the Tampa Bay area. We were virtual in our own market first.
Yeah.
But then after we stepped outside of Tampa, we started going to the territories that were like 2 hours away, like
Mhm.
Sarasota,
Right.
Manatee County. We went to Polk County, Orange County, Orlando.
Yeah.
We started hitting all the counties that were within a 2.5 hour radius of where we were.
Mhm.
And then from there, we gradually grew out to Jacksonville, Florida. Then we went to North Carolina, and then we went
Oh, nice.
to Texas, and then we hit some other states too. But we started to realize that it's actually easier to wholesale in some other states,
Sure.
right? Some other states that like the hype hasn't caught on yet,
Yeah.
and values are on the rise. There's a lot of people moving there. There's a lot of potential. And so I actually came up with a 2-step formula for identifying the hottest
Love
markets
it.
across the country, because I noticed a pattern between the high performing areas that we were, where they were easier to get deals. So I'm cool to share it if you'd like me to share it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you would. Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, sure. So, and the neat thing about this is that you don't need any fancy tools or expensive software programs to figure this out. You just need Google, right? So, what we realized is there was a common theme between two things between the areas that were successful for us, right? So, first is the population size.
Yeah.
So, if you go to Google and you're considering a county, I find that a lot of people either have a place they're thinking of starting in, but they're just not sure if it's a good area. Maybe they want to look at their hometown just to see if it makes sense to go virtual there. So you go to Google, you type in the county and then the state, and you're going to type in population size, right? And then Google's going to spit back the population there. What you want that to be is a minimum of 250,000 people. Because what I've typically found is in territories where it's less than 250,000 people, it's going to be more of like a rural territory where you're not going to have a hard time with sellers saying yes, but you're going to have a hard time getting deals sold because there's not as many buyers.
Right.
We want to focus on the major metro areas. So that's check mark number one, right? So if you look at your territory and you see that, that's check mark number one. Step two is going to Google again and typing in the same county and the median home price. So for those who are listening who don't know what the median home price is, if you
Yeah.
picture housing prices on a timeline, you have the dramatically inexpensive house on the left that are like 50K and less. You have the multi-million-dollar house on the right. The median price is the one in the middle. It's the everyman's house. It's the one that everybody can afford, right? So you type in the county median home price, you're going to see a Zillow link. You're going to click that link, and you want that to be a minimum of $200,000, right? And if you have that combination right there, 250,000 population, 200,000 median home price, that is like lightning. And the closer it is to 200,000, the much easier it's going to be to get deals.
Interesting. I love that. Very similar to what we do here. So we started in Chattanooga, and because we had 4 partners, we needed to be in other markets just to do more deals, because we were splitting the pie so many ways. And the first place we went to, the first couple cities were terrible. We had no plan. We were out trying to figure this out on our own. So we went to Birmingham, which was absolutely terrible. Poor Birmingham. I slammed Birmingham all the time. It was the worst dump ever. And then we went to St. Louis, which was almost as bad.
Yeah.
Just like literally like 20 square blocks. It's a war zone. And we were getting contracts over there that were just absolutely unsellable. So no, I love that. That's a fantastic rule of thumb for us. Again, I knew Chattanooga worked. So eventually I just started saying, okay, I'm not going to go any place lower than Chattanooga, which is about 270,000. So that's a good
Hmm.
number. And then I would just, I had the city that I knew worked. So whenever we were looking at a new market, I would just go to Chattanooga real quick, pull the last 90 days of cash sales, go to my new
Yeah.
place and pull 90 days of cash sales. Are they at least the same? Great. Well, then that just shows me that there's buyers here. So I love that those two things. Those are great.
Can I piggyback on that for a second?
Yeah,
Because you
let's
said
go.
something that's really awesome. And it's just kind of like a natural transition into the
Mhm.
next step,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of people I talk to, they really struggle in wholesaling because they're doing deals the old way, right?
Yeah.
They're going and finding the deal first,
Hmm.
putting it under contract. They're praying that they sell it,
Hmm.
right? And their heart's going like this the entire time they got the deal out there.
Hmm.
And what if they don't find a buyer? They lose the deal. They waste all that effort, right? So, what we believe the best way to do deals is what I like to call the FYBF method. So,
Okay.
FYBF stands for find your buyer first. So, what you want to do once you've identified your territory, you want to go ahead and do marketing for buyers. So, it's very simple. You're
Hmm.
just going to go to Facebook groups, right? So, you're
Yeah.
going to join all the local Facebook groups in your territory. So, if you choose like Hillsborough County, Florida, you're going
Mhm.
to join all the real estate investor related Facebook groups in that
Yeah.
territory. Then from there, what you're going to do is you're going to go in there and you're going to see a lot of wholesalers posting deals. Okay. And in the comments section of those deal posts, you're going to see people saying, I'm a buyer, I'm a buyer, I'm a
Right.
buyer. You want to network with these people. You want to find out if they are a wholesaler, realtor, or cash buyer.
Yeah.
And then from there, find out what their criteria is, add them all to your list. Okay. And then from there, you want to take that criteria and go find what they want. So now
Yeah.
you found your buyer first. You know exactly the types of properties they're looking for. You do marketing for those types of properties and you bring it to them. And when you do that, wholesaling becomes so much easier.
Right. Love it. Two things on that. We can keep
Yeah.
going all day. You can tell
Yeah.
we people, for those watching, that we really do deals. So if you're on your desktop or your laptop and you go into those groups and you search Hillsborough landlords, Hillsborough investors, Hillsborough rehabs, whatever, you're going to go to all those groups, but then go into the search bar of that group and type @gmail.com and just
Boom.
enter. You're going to pull up every single post where somebody has left an email. And I say @Gmail because it's the most popular extension that's out there. And when I was first going to Atlanta, I did this over the course of like 2 weeks. I was just sitting at home at night watching TV and just cutting and pasting, cutting and pasting, cutting and pasting, and built just an absolute massive buyers list. And then also within those posts, people are telling you what they want. So yeah, everything that we've ever taught when we were coaching years and years ago was always start with the end in mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that your buyers want, right? Because if
Yep.
I'm just feeding stuff into the top of my funnel, if I'm putting grapefruits in the top of my funnel and I'm expecting oranges to come out the bottom, it's never going to work. Figure out what your buyers want, even if you're just doing it with the data, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
pull an Excel. I was talking to Batch yesterday, and I'm like, just pull a spreadsheet of what's sold for cash, and just sort through that by zip code. What are the zip codes with the most cash transactions, right? That's where you should probably go do your marketing. What is the average or the median, like house size, square footage, right? Like that's what you're looking for. That will show you what people are looking to buy. It's not that hard.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you can do that and you can add just a minimum of 5 people a day to your buyers
Mhm.
list,
Yeah,
man, 5 people a day keeps drop deals away. So do
that's right.
that. And you will have a much easier of a time getting deals sold. Because to your point, David, if this entire business model depends on having a buyer to make money, wouldn't it make sense to find that first?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I always tell people it's like the teacher's edition to your high school, physics book. You just want the answers. This is not complicated. Just takes a
Yep.
little bit of thought on the front side. And I tell people like I'm lazy. Like I get a lot of shit done during the day, but I just want to find the easiest way to do it possible.
Totally.
So let's just do a little bit of work on the front side. Let's sharpen the axe just a little bit before we start chopping away at that tree, and let's find the quickest path to success.
Yeah. I see so many wholesalers being like, hey, like I put a contract on this retail shopping center, or I have this property
Yeah.
that is in this really rough area, but the
Yeah.
homeowner added 4 garages and 16 bedrooms to it. Like,
Yeah.
who wants to buy it? And it's like, so do you have a buyer for something like that? Well, no. Okay. Then why did you put that under contract? So
Yeah.
yeah, it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah. Or it's a 2-bedroom house on 53 acres. I'm like, what is an investor going to do? I mean, think about the thing I try to explain to people is, that we talk about a timeline of a deal, right? We start with like the most basic is picking your market all the way to
Yeah.
your closing, right? So the deal goes through that timeline. But the day I get paid because I've wholesaled that deal, that's not the end. Like that
Mhm.
deal lives on, right? So you have to envision like how does a buyer actually make money with this deal, right?
Mhm.
You can figure that out and teach that to your acquisitions people. My gosh, your business will just skyrocket because you understand at the very onset, okay, this is going to be a rental property. This is how my buyer's going to make money. This is how I have to price this thing. Or, oh, this is going to be a rehab, or this is going to be an Airbnb, or whatever it is. And when you can figure that on the front side, instead of just randomly going, I'm going to contract everything between 53 and 62% of Zillow, and that's just it. And that's going to be my whole strategy.
Yeah.
You'll just find so much more success.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So cool. So you're doing this for a couple of years, having great success. You're in lots of markets. What made you decide to get into coaching?
Yeah. So, there comes to be a point in your wholesaling journey where another deal just becomes another deal, right? That
The most horrible
excitement of
thing. People don't believe it, and you're like, dude, it just becomes a thing you do every day because it's so
it's like, oh
different.
no, I'll
So
do it
different
now.
from like doing your first deal where I'm like, I told people like, dude, I will cartwheel naked down Main Street. Nobody wants to see that. Like, but you're so
Yeah.
excited. You want it so badly. And then you do 100, 200, 300, 500 deals. And
Yeah.
it, like your heartbeat like doesn't skip a beat anymore. You're like, okay, great, that's done. I'm more worried about the next one than the one that just closed.
Yeah, so you're looking for that next challenge, that next thing, right? And for me, I was like, this business has allowed my wife and I to lead an amazing lifestyle. Travel when we wanted to travel, just to spend a lot of time with friends and family. Build up financial security for the future. And we're
Mhm.
like, how powerful would it be, and how big of an impact could we have if
Yeah.
we showed other people how to do the same thing that led to the lifestyle that we have, right? Because there's so many people out there that are just spinning their wheels trying to do deals. They don't know where to turn. They're so confused by all the information out there. They're
Yeah.
joining these programs where there's like 1,000 videos they have to watch before they get their first deal, and each one's like an hour long. And
Mhm.
they just need a better way. They need a simple path to doing their first deal. And that's really what we put together. We put together something really special to where people have an opportunity to get deals the easy way
Mhm.
without going through the frustration trying to figure things out on their own,
Yeah.
and just making that path to get where they want to go to a lot more realistic and a lot sooner.
Yeah, no, 100%. And for me, some of it became, I had a couple of different partners over the years, and some I bought rentals with, and some we just wholesaled with, and some we did other types of deals with. But then, after you get to a point, you want to share and give that back,
Totally.
and now I want to do deals with people that I like, people that I want to
Yeah.
be around, and yeah, and I want people to feel some of that success. Like you, I tell people I have a life that I probably don't even deserve most days. I'm just a nitwit kid from Boston, just out here, just bumbling through life. But yeah, I'd love to see some other people, get that. And that's that, whatever the opposite of scarcity is, abundance, right? We just want to share that with people.
Totally. I mean, I have some people being like, Chris, like, if you're doing deals, you're doing all these deals, like, why reveal your secrets? Why share those with people? That
Ah,
is a scarcity minded
yeah,
mentality right there. Because the thought is like when you grow and you start having this abundance, like, you really want to start sharing that with people. And I truly believe money reveals people's true character,
yeah,
right? So if you are generous and you're abundant thinking when you don't have much, that's going to magnify when you
the,
get to the level that you want to get to, right? But at the same time, if you're scarcity minded at the beginning, you're just focused on me, right? And you could care less about these seller situations, just trying to make money and that's it. Like, that's going to magnify too when you get to the level that you're looking to get to, if you even get there, right?
yeah,
So, what goes on between your two ears matters so much on this journey, and
yeah,
also what's in your heart and what you believe, and how you go about doing business. It
yeah.
just speaks volumes when you get as you start to increase.
Yeah, and I think, guys, what Chris is talking about, he's not talking about like we've all had that day in the shower where like, oh my God, there's just no more houses to buy.
Yeah.
Like, or oh, wow, there's no more buyers out there, right? Like, get in an airplane, go look down. There's millions, hundreds of millions of people just here in the United States. There are plenty of deals for everybody. We couldn't none of us could all handle all of the deals. Like it's just ridiculous.
Exactly.
So
Competition doesn't even really exist. And it's like, a big shift that I see that makes a big impact on people is in the beginning thinking, instead of saying like, I can't do this because of X, Y, and Z, or this is too hard because of this, that, and the other, right? They need to start asking themselves like, how can I? Shift
right.
from like, I can't to how can I? Because when
Mhm.
you say I can't, your brain shuts down. It's like, okay, cool,
Yeah.
my job's done. Right. But when you start saying like, how can I do these things?
Mhm.
That's when your brain goes into solution mode and you start thinking,
Does.
okay, well, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do X, Y, and Z. That's
Love
why
it.
we went virtual. We just didn't
Yeah.
sit in our market being like, hey, this is kind of tough. Our cost per deal is going up and
Mhm.
our deal volume's going down. Like, I guess that's it. We
Yeah.
could have easily said that. But
Yeah.
instead we start thinking of solutions like, what if, like, how could we get this result somewhere else? And
Mhm.
that really leads to innovation as an entrepreneur. We all have hard days, right?
Yeah.
But the difference is the people that are successful, they take those hard days and they look at them as an opportunity and they create opportunity from those hard days.
Yeah. A friend of mine, he has a book called No Bad Days. And I don't know if I agree with no bad days. Like
Yeah,
I get it. We all have a bad day, but the
sure.
next day
Yeah.
you get up and you have to bounce back.
Yeah.
And, like you said, the mind is a powerful thing. That's, when I get stuck, everybody gets stuck, right?
Yeah,
The thing that I
totally.
tell myself is, okay, there is a solution here.
Yeah.
You just have to tell your brain because someplace in here in this gray matter is the solution and your brain will work it out. It will figure it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, my God, I'm not going to let this software beat me. There has
Yeah.
got to be a solution to do the things I want. And that's just that positive mindset of not being a victim and not just quitting. And, that's really the most important thing. Kind of like we talked about at the beginning, this business wholesaling for sure, it's not that complicated.
Mm.
Just have to be determined and want it. You just have to want it and be willing to put it ahead of some other things until you get a little momentum going.
Yeah, like my dad told me when I was growing up, he said, if you look at life as easy, it's
Hmm.
going to be hard,
Yeah.
right? But if you look at life as hard, it becomes infinitely easier.
Right.
So this is where I feel like the entrepreneur journey, like you said, is full of ups and downs. Like
Yeah.
I have my bad days just like
Oh.
anybody else, right?
Yeah.
But the choice is like, what do you do on those bad days? Do you get up or do you just throw in the towel, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is a lot of wholesalers, I feel like they're attracted to this industry because they're like, oh, this is going to be so easy. I'm just going to push a few buttons. Money's going to fall from the sky. I'm going to be sitting on the yacht by
Yeah.
Tuesday at noon,
Order the jet. Order the jet. I'm going to be rich. And you know
Yes.
what? Our industry is probably guilty of causing that. There are certainly people who promote the Rolexes and the Lambos and the yacht
Yeah.
lifestyle. And one thing I like to just tell people, you and I both know every single person that's in everybody that's famous out there. I think
Yeah.
we know them certainly between us. Every one of them has had bad days. Like
Totally.
everyone has, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to make payroll. This guy's going to sue me. Like everybody has those
Mm,
days. The difference is those people just don't quit. Right?
yeah.
They just don't quit. They say, okay, what's the solution? What's the way through this? How do I solve this? Who can help me? Not necessarily, it's not always I, but who are the people that I can bring in to help me? So I
Yeah.
absolutely love that. And mindset's huge for us. I've paid people a ton of money to come to my office and, train my team to view life that way.
Yeah, for sure. So if like you can view this journey as like it's going to be hard,
Yeah.
then at that point, like it becomes easier for you because you're expecting resistance, you're expecting those obstacles. But
Yeah.
totally, man. Totally.
Cool. So before we go, I know people are going to be interested in this because, I think a lot of people are going to resonate with what you've got going on, but tell us a little bit more about the coaching. And yeah, I'd love to get a link where we can send some people that way.
Sure. Yeah. So, what I specialize in doing is showing new wholesalers how to get their first deal in 90 days, even if they have a full time job and zero experience.
All right.
And the best part is that we show them how to do it all from home, right? So, you're not driving to properties back and forth. You're not
Yeah.
meeting buyers, meeting sellers, nothing like that.
Wow.
You are solely focused on doing this business from home and creating a fantastic income and lifestyle. We show you how to grow a buyer's list crazy fast. We show you how to get leads coming in consistently, and then from there, create a plan to and a roadmap to do deals consistently from home anywhere in the country.
Mhm.
So, if anyone would like to learn more about that, go to virtualwholesalingmadesimple.com, fill out the application, and I want you to go ahead and be detailed in your responses because I don't take on everybody, right?
Yeah.
I'm very selective with who I bring on. And if I like what you have to say, I'll consider bringing you on as a client. But either way, I look forward to connecting with you and either working with you on the journey or providing some resources that can help you with that next logical step,
Yeah.
whatever that may be for you.
I love the virtual wholesaling model. I had this super big hang up in the beginning because I didn't have a coach that was teaching me how to do that. So we somehow figured it out on our own. But it does fascinate me to talk to people like, you can't just do this from home. I'm like, oh no, I promise. Like, you can.
Yes, you
You
can.
can. The thing to remember is it's not about you. It's
Yeah.
about the person you're helping, right? That's
Mm,
our job as investors, is to be out here and to help people and solve their problem. So whether the economy is up or the economy is down, life is still happening to people, right? They're getting job transfers. They're getting, unfortunately, there's death and divorce and probate and bad tenants and all of these things, right? These things are happening whether the economy is
yeah.
super high, super low, doesn't matter. There's always a place and an opportunity for us to help those people. There are people that are literally losing sleep at night. If you within a
Mm,
mile of where every single person is here, unless you're in the up in the Rocky Mountains and there's nobody around, if you're in any kind of populated area, within a mile there is somebody who tonight is losing sleep. And because you're listening to a podcast like this, because you're in Chris's group, or whatever group that you're in, you have the ability, you have the responsibility to help those people. And I think that's a really powerful thing.
totally. Absolutely, man. And I love that. This journey has been a blessing. It's been a blessing to be able to meet some of the great people like yourself along the way. And all that's just been truly a gift, and happy to share that gift with other people too. So,
Cool. Chris, man, thank you so much for coming on, man. I know it's early, but this was a great way to start our day.
yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed sharing with your audience like things that have worked for me in the past and what I know that can work for them. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out, and I'll look forward to connecting with y'all at some point in the near future.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Guys, make sure you like, follow, subscribe, do all of the things, and we'll see you on the next one.